Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this episode. We are the Hanker Sisters. My name is Celine.
And I am Nicole.
Today, we are going to be discussing what the true self is as opposed to the false self is, give you a bit of an idea of what that is, start getting you to identify when you're or how you're operating out of your false identity, and give you an overview as to why it's important to operate out of the true self as opposed to the false self.
So let's start off with talking about what exactly is the false self. So, just as it says, it is the false version of who you really are. And how many of us dim our light to fit in, or we pretend to be somebody that we're not? And again, when I say this, I'm talking about this being done on an unconscious level. So we pretend to be someone that we're not. So, for example, let's say you're in a group of people and everybody's talking about something, and you don't necessarily find this topic of conversation interesting at all, but you'll pretend to find it really interesting because you want to be a part of the group. And so there are so many ways in which we unconsciously dim who we are, and we essentially put on a mask to protect our identity because we don't want people to see who we really are. And again, this is happening totally unconsciously. And why is it that we do this? A lot of the time, it's a coping mechanism, it's a protective mechanism that we develop because perhaps at some point in our lives, we were told something that made us not feel good about who we were, or made us feel small, or made us feel that what we were saying was not interesting, or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure you have experienced this for yourself. And so, yes, it's a protective mechanism, it's a coping mechanism, it's a way of creating an identity that allows us to fit into society, allows us to fit into the general narrative that's going on, allow us to fit into perhaps a group of friends. And I really talk about this coming from, when we're children, is how often do we pretend to be someone that we're not so that we don't get picked on, or so that we get accepted. And I mean, if we really think about it, kids can be really, really mean. And so when you think about how we treated each other when we were kids, if you were not the popular kid, then, you would pretend to like certain things or do certain things that totally went against who you were and didn't necessarily provide you with much interest, but for the sake of being part of the group, you pretended to be someone that you weren't.
The false identity. How would I describe that? I would describe the false identity as the part of you that you're trying to suppress, or you want to hide, or that is stuck in shame, or that operates continuously out of fear, or is looping in comparisonitis, or enjoys complaining a lot. All of that is, yes, it's part of the identity that we wear. And it's those are mechanisms to keep us away from feeling, because feeling seems to be such a thing these days. People are afraid of feeling, and feeling is like the base of who we are as emotional beings. We feel. And so, but it's been taught to us from a very, very early age that being vulnerable is dangerous, or being vulnerable is weak, or being vulnerable is not accepted for X, Y, and Z reasons. And so we suppress that vulnerability, we suppress our truth, we suppress our emotions, we suppress how we're feeling in that moment, so that we can conform to the status quo.
Yeah, we suppress our thoughts. And as you were saying, feeling is the basis of the human experience. If we're not feeling, then already we're not being who we really are.
And it's the mental that will stop us from feeling. So the mental will go into, oh, that feels uncomfortable, so we'll feel something. This is how it actually works, the mechanism of feeling. I can feel this and it feels soft, yeah, but I can also feel this and say to myself that I don't really like soft and hard things. I'd much rather be feeling this, for example. So I've created a belief out of this. I don't like it. I don't like the smoothness. I don't like the hardness. I'd much prefer this, as opposed to just feeling what this is. I've created some mental concept, some mental words,
Story.
some story, thank you very much, which makes me not like it. But really, it's just feeling something, isn't it? And so the same thing when it's an emotional feeling. We'll start feeling perhaps it's a constriction in our chest, and then the mental will come in and say, oh, I don't like this. This feels uncomfortable. Let me suppress it. So I'll suppress it. What will I do instead? I'll go in and pick up a cigarette, or I'll go and scroll on my phone, or I'll go and watch YouTube, or I'll go and what's another coping mechanism?
Basically, just do something that isn't necessarily good for you, but because you don't want to feel, it will take you out of that experience.
Exactly. And the idea is really to feel it, because there's no feeling that lasts forever. And so feel the discomfort in that moment, and you'll notice that it'll disappear if you're really true to that feeling and you know how to focus on it and hone into it, and you're not afraid of it, you're not afraid of feeling, then that feeling will just complete its loop and move out. So yes, so the false identity is the part of us that is suppressing a lot of our feelings, a lot of our emotions, a lot of our truth. And that is an identity that we wear so that we can feel more safe. But that safety is illusionary, it's a false security, because that false security is blocking you from actually looking at what is currently being shamed or hidden or rejected or doesn't want to be felt or seen, etc. And that is where the gold is. That is where new information can come out of, or new insight. That is where the body can actually let go of all of that and start healing itself. And so that is why it's really important to do the work to move into the true self. Otherwise, we'll continuously be operating out of our shadow self, out of this identity, this ego, whatever you want to call it. And so what we've also noticed is words can get tricky at some point, because it depends from which level, from which layer you are talking from, right?
So just take a moment to think about some of the stuff we've said here and let us know in the comments if you can notice how perhaps you're doing some of this stuff already. Can you notice where you are disengaging or where you have developed certain coping mechanisms to avoid feeling? Because all of those times that you avoid feeling is when you are taking yourself out of your true self into your false self.
Yes. And another thing that I wanted to touch upon is this thing of people pleasing, because we all have a tendency to do it, and it's deeply stemmed and rooted into our makeup. And I'd just like to give a bit of an overview as to why that is. So, the people pleasing we do because we have been taught from a very young age that to be seen as different is a bad thing. We are taught to conform, we are taught to be part of the group, to be part of the community, to be part of society. If you're not part of society, you're deemed as eccentric or crazy or whatever, and you can even be put into a mental ward simply because you do not act the way society wants you to act, even though you're not harming anyone. And so that's a deeply entrenched mechanism. And this thing of belonging, back in the day, back in the day, it was a survival thing. If we were not part of that community, if we were not part of that tribe, and we were ostracized from it, that most certainly meant death at that time. But today, it's no longer such a survival thing. we don't need to be so entrenched in the community or part of a tribe to feel okay, to be independent, to walk on our own. It's good to have the tribe, but do we have to be a part of it? No, we don't. I'm not going to die if I'm not part of the tribe. And where am I going with this? The people pleasing. Why the people pleasing? Sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
Basically, what I think you're trying to say is that people pleasing is one of these different coping mechanisms that we develop in order to hide our true self, because this sits within our reptilian brain and is part of our developmental process. So let's say back in the day when we were all cavemen, we we didn't have guns and things like that. We needed the tribe to help us in order to not die, in order to hunt and in order to get food and all of that kind of stuff. And so what happens is we people please because we are essentially scared on one level of hurting the other person's feelings, but I'll come back to that in a bit. But also because we don't we're fearful that if we say things that do not fit with the general narrative,
We will
that
be
we
ostracized.
will be ostracized and we won't fit in. But that's just not true. This is, again, a belief that we have all, decided to hold on to collectively because this is what is repeated to us over and over again. And you see, the thing with beliefs is that even if a belief is totally not real, if someone repeats something to you over and over and over again, eventually you're going to start to believe it to be real. So there are those beliefs that we hold that we are conscious of, and there are those beliefs that we hold that we are unconscious of. And the thing is, we have to remember that the majority of the beliefs that we hold today in our adulthood actually stem from beliefs that were built. So the foundation of our beliefs in adulthood were based on beliefs that we developed from the time we were born to the age of about 5. Now, if you think about how, what do we really know and
So those would be the
understand?
core beliefs. From 1 to 5 would be the core beliefs. And the core beliefs are those that we tend not to know that we're even holding because they're very entrenched and they're very subconscious. And of course, from then we continue to build beliefs. But those core ones are the ones that really define almost the identity or the personality or the mask that we're wearing currently. And they're the most difficult to find.
Because these are basically like our deep seated values and our deep seated morals. And unless, we don't always know the beliefs that we hold until a situation arises that kind of forces us to check those beliefs, and then we're like, "Ooh, didn't know that I believed that." But the beauty about beliefs is that we can change them at any time in our life, from a young age to a super old age, because of something called neuroplasticity. This is scientifically backed research that shows that there is always the possibility to etch and create new neural pathways in our brain, which is why we can continue learning new things regardless of our age. This is why you can see, for example, I mean, our father is a great example. At the age of 90, he became a published author. So it's really showing that we can develop new behaviors and new attitudes and new beliefs and new actions, because all of these are tied together.
It is even required of us to do that. Otherwise, we're stagnant and we're not growing. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. You can stay in your comfort zone, totally fine. But the idea is, if you want to evolve your soul, if you're here for the evolution of your soul, then you want to get out of your comfort zone and you want to start doing things differently, being different.
It's all about expansion, right? If you imagine, if you hadn't changed, let's say you're 45 years old today, and imagine nothing in your life has changed since you were about 15. That's just a lot of stagnancy, and the whole point of the human experience is to evolve and grow. And this is why when we look at all the challenges that are taking place in the world at this moment, they're all pushing us out of our comfort zone, because you see, that's the problem with the comfort zone, is it gets really, really comfy, and then we don't want to get out of it. And that's the thing, is, the only constant in life is change. But change can be really overwhelming and very unsettling when we are not the ones who instigate that change. So if you take the time to instigate that change, and in this case, we're really talking about instigating the change of living from a place of your true self as opposed to your false self, then you begin to evolve and you begin to live a life, a totally different life. And why is it that we're going on and on about this true self and false self is because one of the main reasons why you are unhappy, why you are maybe feeling lost, why you are maybe feeling unfulfilled, why you are not waking up every single day and say, I absolutely love my life, is because you are operating from your false self as opposed to the absolute true version of who you are.
And
And
so,
the true version of who you are is the version of you that exists underneath all the programming and the trauma and the pain and the cultural conditioning and the education, every single time in your life that you were made to feel wrong or bad or this or that, you essentially were like, okay, well, if I'm not going to be accepted for who I am, I'm going to put on this mask and operate from a totally new identity.
yes, imagine a clean slate. Literally a clean slate. So the true self would be limitless, would be boundless, would be connected to all that is, would be in flow, would be in a space of harmony and peace. That doesn't mean that challenges don't come into your life. It just means that your internal landscape remains peaceful no matter what is happening in the external world. And that is why it's important and also such a gift to be operating out of the true self.
Absolutely. And so really the main purpose of this video was to highlight how in essence we unconsciously allow the false self to take over. And it's also just we live in a world where we are all supposed to be the protagonist of our life story. But a lot of the time, we play second fiddle or second chair or whatever else you want to call it because we don't think that we are worthy. We don't think that we are good enough. We don't think that we have what it takes. And this is only beliefs that you have developed over time, limiting beliefs that have developed over time because of information that has been mirrored back at you. And it all comes back to our emotions and the way we feel. Because if we are constantly being told that we're wrong, if we're constantly being told that we're not good, if we're constantly being told that, you need to buy this product to be the better version of yourself, then of course, this is life constantly showing us that our true self is not wanted. But that's just not true. And so really we invite you to start looking into your life, looking into where perhaps you are overshadowing yourself because of limiting beliefs, where you don't believe that you are good enough, and just start to live a better and more fulfilling life by learning to identify who the true you really is.
I would conclude that by saying, listen to your thoughts, listen to what you are telling yourself. If that thought is making you feel less than somehow, making you feel small, that is your false self that is talking. Your true self makes you feel good. Your true self makes you feel free. Your true self makes you feel boundless. So just start checking into how you're speaking to yourself, the tone of voice that you're using, and the frequency to which you keep telling yourself the same thing. Is there anything you would like to add? No. I
No.
think that concludes our video for today. We thank you very much for being here with us. We will continue to expand on this subject because there is so much to say, but we also don't want to make this video too long. And our Panya is a little overexcited at the moment.
So, like and share the video if you have resonated with anything that has been said here, and subscribe to the channel to keep posted and receive more information around this topic and so much more.